right now. What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knocks Talks. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Center, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, the Community Addictions Peer Support Association, Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mom Stop the Harm, the Canadian Research Initiative in Substance Misuse at Quebec Atlantic Node, and Carter's Counseling. Tonight's guest, person in recovery, Tamara from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, is here to share her incredible story with us, and we are going to meet her right after this.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years, I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, let's bring in Tamara again. So, yeah, that was crazy. How are you? Was that stressful for you?
That was stressful, yes.
Yeah.
It really was.
It's interesting because I said just before the show, I'm like, I've never had the stream go down before. Like, I've always managed to muddle through. And then I'm like, knock on wood. And then that happened for the first time ever. So, yeah. So, is there anything? Yeah, is there anything you'd like to say before we get started tonight?
I just want to thank you for having me on the show, and I just want to say I'm grateful to be here and grateful to be able to share my story.
All right. Okay, well, let's do it. Again. All right. So, tell us about what it was like growing up.
All right. So, growing up, I remember always having a really good childhood. I loved school. I always got good grades. I had a really good relationship with my mom. I guess all the way up until I was about 7. Mm-hmm. It was an awesome childhood.
Mm-hmm. Your parents lived apart though, right? Your mom and your dad?
So my mom and my dad were never, I don't think they were together, at all while I was a kid. I think they broke up really early on, when I was a baby, I think.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember my parents being together. So.
Yeah. So what happened at 7 then?
So, my dad decided that he was gonna not be a part of my life anymore and just abandon me. So it was like a Father's Day weekend, and he had called and asked me to get all my stuff ready and asked me if I was ready to go for the weekend. And I just waited for him, and he just didn't show up. He just didn't come and get me, and I didn't see him again for probably about 11 years.
How did that affect your life and the way you thought about yourself?
It affected my life a lot. So, a lot. It was pretty much the main reason in my whole reason for using pretty much in my later years. It made me always seek for attention, always looking to not be rejected. It affected me greatly, like hugely. It was a very big factor in what made me into the what I was.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you the first time you got loaded? What was there drinking at home?
So I don't remember as a small child drinking being involved in the house. I guess until I think it was about 7 or 8 when my mom got married to her one husband, and that is when drinking was in the house quite a lot. There was a lot of drinking in the house actually around that time, but I was about 11 when I got high for the first time, like when I smoked a joint for the very first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how was it? How was it?
I want to say that I sort of liked it, but I didn't really like the way that it made me feel. I I remember laughing a lot. I remember finding it funny at first, and then the paranoia started to kick in.
Yeah.
And I started to not like it very much. But
was there any
drinking.
Was there any abuse in the home around this time?
So with my stepdad, he was a very abusive person towards my mom and to my brother. He was really emotionally and mentally and physically abusive to both of them. Mentally and emotionally for me too. He never put his hands on me actually ever, but I remember him fighting with my brother a lot, fighting with my mom a lot. I remember it being really emotionally traumatic for my mom during that time. Yeah.
So after you started smoking weed, were you all in after that, or
it was
happened?
more that brought me into drinking more, like opened me up to doing that kind of stuff. And it was more or less like when I started drinking that I really liked it.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you
I really
started
liked
doing
the attention. What's that?
How old were you when you started drinking?
I'm gonna say in and around 12 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
In and around that age. I remember we were living out at a lake, and I'd met this girl out there, and I used to go and stay at her house as much as I could so that we could drink, because she was only there during the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go over there, and she would be there a lot by herself, which I thought was kind of cool at that age, right? Because most people's parents are always around at that age, but her stepdad wasn't at their cabin very often, and I used to try to stay there as much as I could just so that we could party all the time.
Yeah. So you started self-harming at a young age too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I started self-harming I think I was probably about 13. I'd become pretty depressed around that time, so I just couldn't really understand why my dad didn't want anything to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really emotionally traumatic for me. And I felt like hurting myself in that type of way made the emotional pain less. So I would cut myself a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Well, your stepdad tried to like run you over at some point, didn't he?
Yeah, so this was after my brother had moved away because he was really sick and tired of him. And him and my mom were fighting, and I always knew when I would hear them fighting that I should get ready to go, because my mom would try to get me out of the house so that I wouldn't have to go through any of that stuff. So I remember hearing a window smash, like our front window getting smashed, and then my mom coming and telling me to come and get ready to go. And so I did, and then we were walking down the highway, and I had my house keys in my backpack, and he chased us down the highway in his truck. And at that point, I ran into the ditch, and he had tried to run me over in the ditch. And my mom had pulled me out of the way before he actually hit me.
So how was school? Did you make friends easy?
So I thought I was pretty popular in school. I liked school. I guess up until till high school. That's when I started to get pretty wild, I guess you would say. But I loved art. Art was my favorite subject in school. I loved to draw. It was like an outlet for me.
So, at what point did you start smoking meth?
I think I was about 14 or 15. We had moved back to Saskatoon. Well, I had moved back to the Saskatoon at that time. My mom was in the States, and she was living out there at that time, and I was living with a family member in Saskatoon. And I think it was because I was dating somebody, and he was an addict and a gang member. And I thought that, the bad boy thing, right? And I couldn't understand why he was choosing drugs over me, right? I couldn't see why anybody would do that. Like I just didn't understand the pull. And so I tried the drugs just to see what made sense. I just tried to make sense out of it, right? I remember doing that.
Yeah. So did you what the heck happened there? The glitches continue. Donna's just hanging on by a thread over here. She's like, I can't take anymore. So, did you graduate?
No, I didn't. I dropped out of school in, I believe it was grade 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I just left school.
Yeah. So, did you use IV drugs at all?
Yeah. So, when I was in high school, I had a small stint of using IV drugs until I guess my mom caught me using.
Yeah.
And then later on down the road, after I moved back from Ontario, I got really heavy into using IV drugs.
Yeah. So at one point, your mom gave you an ultimatum. She said, stop using or get out. What did you do?
Yeah, so I think it was because I was at that point becoming really violent with her and like trying to fight her a lot.
Like physically fight her?
Yeah. There was a few times that I remember actually fighting her and like not getting very far with it, but I mean trying to physically fight her.
She was pretty tough or what?
Yes, my mom's got her black belt, so I don't know why I would even try.
Oh, why would you even? You must have been using drugs, man.
So yeah. So my mom gave me that ultimatum and she said, you know, like either you quit using or you get out of my house. And
Mhm.
I just, I think that she thought that I was going to say, okay, let's quit. I'm going to quit. But I decided to leave instead. And that's when my addiction got pretty intense with meth,
Mhm.
I'd say.
You actually ended up homeless for a while.
Yeah, so for a long time there I was not a long time, I guess. Like I was homeless for a while there and just living off of people on the streets like that would give me drugs or like a lot of people decided that they were going to take care of me while I was doing that because I was so young, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. So, your mom moved to Ontario, and then you sort of followed her there a short while after, correct?
yeah, so she moved to Ontario to take a good job out
Yeah.
there, like um and I was at that point I was about 18 and I was just thinking, you know, like I'm kind of sick of this life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should move out there too. And I had a friend that lived in London, Ontario at that time, so I moved out there with her. And I was actually sober for quite a while out there.
Yeah. So, how did you stay sober while you were out there? What did you do?
Um, so I think it's just because I didn't know anybody out there
Mm-hmm.
that I just didn't take it upon myself to seek out the drugs in the same way that I did when I was in Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I worked a lot while I was out there. I worked at a bar
And stayed sober working in a bar.
for a little while. For a little while. I mean, I feel like the bar scene and drugs they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
So,
so.
how did you get back into it then?
So I started dating somebody out there that he also worked at the bar. Um, and he was doing Oxycontin, and I didn't know what that was. Like, I didn't really think that it was an addictive drug. Like, uh, to me, in my mind, uh, crystal meth was like a drug that you would get addicted to because it was just like a chemical, right? So I thought I was kind of naive at that time, and I didn't think that I didn't even know what oxys were. Like I didn't know that it was an opiate. I didn't know that you could get addicted to it like that. And
Yeah.
so I did that with him because he was doing it, right? So, and I mean, addicts, they like when they're around stuff like that, they naturally want to try to do the stuff that other people are doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was like a form of fitting in. It was a way of me being accepted, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So,
So, then there was a death back in Saskatoon, and you came
yeah,
back.
so when I was in jail, a boyfriend of mine was murdered while I was in jail. Um, yeah, that was a really traumatic time in my life. Like,
So I was
I,
sorry. I was
go
talking
ahead.
about the death of your mother's husband.
Oh, sorry
We're
about
not there
that.
yet. No, and I'm sorry
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, that's okay. I was confused for a second there. So, so yeah, so I came back for a little while because my mom, when she was married to a man, and they got into a car accident, and he passed away during that car accident. And I came back to help to like be there as a support for my mom because was a really traumatic time for her. Like, she was the one who found him outside of the car and like sat there with him while until the ambulance came, right? And like it was just really traumatic for her. So I thought that it would be best if I came and spent some time with her and was there for her.
Mm-hmm. And you brought some stuff home with you, some pills home with you, unwittingly thinking that a few would be enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I brought some drugs with me because at that point I was already addicted to them, and I needed to have them, and uh yeah, I brought them with me, and I definitely didn't bring enough with me.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely going through withdrawal while I was there trying to be a support there for my mom.
And like you weren't expecting it, were you?
No, right? Like, I mean, not that intense of withdrawal. I mean, while I was in Ontario, I never was without them. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have like the knowledge of withdrawal the way I did when I all of a sudden had run out. And
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get them anywhere because I didn't know where they were in Saskatoon at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through that exact same thing the first time I got dope sick. I didn't see it coming. It was terrible.
Yeah, like, and I mean, oxys, they're just like, still to this day, I've never felt anything like it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's an intense pain. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So, so then what? I mean, you ended up getting sick in Saskatoon. Then what'd you do?
So I went back to Ontario after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, I actually went home early after that because I couldn't handle being sick anymore. And then I just went home and the first thing I did was went and see my dealer.
Yeah. So how was the how was the flight home?
Thankfully, like, I mean, I say thankfully, but I mean, it's only a 5-hour flight, so
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that flight was pretty horrible. I mean, you can't even sleep when you're going through withdrawal like that, and it's
Did you get the
trying to
jumpy
act normal
legs?
around all these people.
Yeah. Did you get the jumpy legs?
Yes, I
Oh,
did.
that's the
Horrible. Oh
worst.
my God.
Oh God.
Anxiety,
Yeah.
the anxiety was the worst.
Yeah. Being there, my friend, being there.
Yeah.
So, during this time, I mean, did you have any fun, or was it all about just not getting sick anymore?
So I'm gonna say that like the overall experience that I had in Ontario was awesome. Like, I had lots of really good friends out there. Not a lot of my friends out there even knew that I was using oxys.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, my experience there was good, other than the fact that I was addicted to Oxycontin.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Other than that, it was good.
Yeah, other
Yeah.
than that, it was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you, I mean, you ended up like smoking fentanyl patches and shooting morphine, and one day at
Yeah.
25,
So,
yeah, like you ended up back in Saskatoon, right? Tell us about
yeah.
that. Why'd you come back?
So, because I guess the main reason would be because they discontinued oxys. They changed them over to the Oxy Neos, so where you couldn't tamper with them and
Yeah.
like use them the way that they
Oh,
used
but
to be
we
used.
tried. We tried.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did we ever?
Yeah.
Um, but I moved here back thinking, like I didn't know anybody anymore, like that, I wouldn't be around the same people, like I wouldn't be able to find the drugs, like, so I came home and I remember telling my mom, like, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and crying to her and telling her that I was going through withdrawal. And then I remember her having to call an ambulance and having to go take me to the hospital. And I remember having to go and like saying finally, you know, like I'm addicted to these things, you know, like I'm addicted to these oxys. I don't think my mom knew until around that time
Mm-hmm.
that I was addicted to oxys.
Yeah.
And then she took me to treatment after that.
Mm-hmm. Did it work?
That was pretty good. Nope, no, it didn't.
Not even for a little while?
So it worked for like a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I like at that point I was like, okay, so I really wanted to quit. I really wanted to get sober. I thought that I was gonna stay sober.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go to school and get my grade 12. I was talking to my dad at that time. I thought things were gonna be great. And then I started going to school, and yeah, and then I met this girl there at school, and she had told me that she did morphine and all this stuff. And I don't know why I would even travel down that road,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like almost as if like she said that, and it was like this ping happened in my brain, and I was just like, oh my God, maybe I should be friends with this person, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
So during this time, was there anything, like looking back now at this time, is there anything that your family could have said or done to maybe influence you off that path?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think I was ready at that time. Like I was really in love with that drug.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how else to put it. Like there were multiple times where I would say out loud to people that like I would rather die of an overdose than die of a natural death. Like I was like that was my drug. Like I was about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't want to quit.
Did you ever have any thoughts of suicide?
Yes, I did. I did actually try to kill myself. Down the road, after I had gotten into using IV, and it was like an everyday thing, all day long thing. I was just in such a state, like I just hated my life at that time, and like I just hated what I'd become, and like I just didn't even want to live anymore, and I hung myself.
So,
I hung myself, yeah, and in a laundry room in an apartment.
so it didn't work because here we are.
No, thankfully, my boyfriend at the time had found me and called an ambulance, and I guess he did CPR and all that stuff. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's crazy because that was one of the first times I'd seen my dad in a long time was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They called him and called him to the hospital for that.
Yeah. So what finally did it for you?
So jail, like jail finally did it, I think.
How'd you end up in there?
I did 2 years in jail. I was on quite a rampage at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been in a high-speed chase with the cops, and I got into an accident, and I fled the scene, and I got caught with drugs on me, and I got 18 months for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 18 months in jail reflecting on my life, and the only people that came to see me were my mom and my grandmother. And every visit that my grandmother came there to see me, it was like she got skinnier and skinnier and skinnier every single time. And it was just like really heartbreaking for me because I lived with my grandmother throughout my whole addiction. Like pretty much after I moved back to Saskatoon, I lived my safe place was my grandmother's house. Like,
Mhm.
I wasn't always there, but if I didn't have somewhere to be, that's where I would go. And watching her deteriorate throughout that time that I was in jail because of this, and I felt like I was doing it to her. Like, the stress of me being in there was making her lose weight.
Mhm.
Like, watching that happen, it just kind of kicked me in the ass and said, like, Tamara, like, you need to smarten up. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want my grandmother to pass and me still be a junkie and still be like
Living that life.
wasting my life away and not being up to the potential that I could be.
Yeah. And your boyfriend was murdered when
Yeah,
you were locked
so
up.
yeah, so my boyfriend got murdered while I was locked up too, and like that was a really traumatic situation for me because like at the same time, like he was a very abusive person. It was a very abusive relationship, but it was the drugs that made it that way, right? Like, so when he was sober, he was a completely different person than when he was on the drugs because the psychosis would just get to him, right? Like, the psychosis would take him and he would become really violent and stuff like that. Um, and it was really like mentally traumatic for me because of the abuse, right? And then being in jail while that happened, and then his murderer was arrested, and I was in jail. I was in the same jail as her, and I used to walk past her unit all the time, and I would see her, and that was like so traumatic for me. I remember I was working in the kitchen one time, and she was coming out of the front office from a court date, and I heard somebody say her name, and I just broke down. Like, it was like I just had went into like hyperventilating, crying, and it was just really difficult watching her there every day, seeing her there every day.
Mhm.
But
So
yeah,
was there
all that.
a sorry, go ahead.
No, you go, you go.
No, you go. So so was there a pinnacle moment that you thought this is enough, I'm going to stop?
Yeah, so I mean, when I got out of jail, like I used for about a month, and then my boyfriend now got out of jail because we both were doing time at that time, and it was just mainly like him wanting to change and then showing me that, like our lives could be better.
Mhm.
And like, to be honest, it was methadone that made me quit. Like, I started taking methadone, like I went on methadone, and like seeing how proud my mom and my grandmother and my whole family were to see that I took that first step
Mhm.
to do that was like it was like a huge accomplishment for me
Yeah.
because like I hadn't felt like my family was proud of me at all in like a very long time.
Mhm.
I didn't even think that I even knew who I was anymore, to be honest. So,
Okay, we're going to take a quick break.
okay.
So tell us about your first year in recovery.
So my first year in recovery was busy. It was like I did a lot of working. My mom helped me out by getting me a job with a friend of hers doing renovations. And I spent a lot of my time working just because it felt good, right? Like being like a working member of society was like, it just felt so good to be able to do that. And like at the first little while I was living with my grandmother, and every morning she would get up with me and wake up with me and like help me make my lunch, make me breakfast, make sure I had my tea and my
Just so
cigarette
happy.
before work.
Just so happy.
You know, she was just so proud of me, and it was just the best thing in the world to see, you know, like my grandmother, it was like a light was like lit up inside of her when she saw me like that, and it was just such a great feeling. Like and every time that I brought groceries home, she would just be so happy, you know. And then me and my boyfriend, we got our first place, and like, and still my grandmother, every time I see her, she's just like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." That's the first thing that comes out of her mouth, is like, she's so proud of me, you know. Like, it's just like, it just feels so good, you know. Like, my first year was just, it was really busy, but a really proud year. Like, yeah, it was good.
So, tell us a little bit more about, so your boyfriend works at the same company too. Oh,
yeah. So, we worked together. We worked together at DDIY for like the first year we were sober, and then he went off to Titan, and now I'm there too, and we're doing drywalling and taping and mudding together and stuff like that. And it's a really, really physically demanding job, but it's fun. It's
so
fun.
Is there ever any point where like one of you wants to get high and the other one talks you out of it, or like how do you guys support each other in your recovery?
So, you know, at the beginning there, I think on my part, because the opiates are so, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. There's such a pull with the opiates, right? At the beginning, it was like I really did want to get high a lot. But he always made me feel like I didn't need that, and he would always just tell me like I don't need it, and like we would go out and do something like take the dogs for a walk, or like just he would just be there emotionally for me and like help me through that, right? And now it's not so much like that. I mean, like, I don't think either one of us has thought about doing stuff like that, and I don't even know how long. But
yeah. So do you so tell us about some of the ways that you manage your own recovery, like when your thoughts go sideways. I mean, you know, it's not necessarily about craving anymore, right? It's about keeping your thoughts clean in a healthy way. What are some things that you do when you start to squirrel cage?
so, I mean, I work a lot. Like I do have two jobs, and like I mean that does help keep me sane, to be really honest. I feel like I've turned my addiction from drugs to working.
I could be guilty of that as well.
Yeah, I bet you could. I truly bet you could.
Yes.
But my dogs, they're like, honestly, I don't know what my life would be like without them, to be really honest, because I don't have kids of my own, and I spend a lot of my time with my dogs and spend a lot of time out with them, walking them, training them. We spend a lot of like I have a stepdaughter, my boyfriend's kid. We spend lots of time with her too. This winter, we just taught her snowboarding, so I spend a lot of time doing that kind of stuff and trying to focus my life on better things than that. than the drugs, and try to like take my life, or take my thoughts into better life, I guess.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Can we see your dog? I know you've got one in the vicinity there, don't you?
Come here, baby. Yeah, I'll grab her one sec. Come here. This is Hazel.
Oh, hello, Hazel. Oh, she's huge.
She's a big girl, yeah.
Yeah.
70 pounds.
You mentioned to me when we talked last that you spend a lot of time training.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, pit bulls are kind of hard-headed, so I mean, you have to train them a lot. Like, I don't know, we are my other dog, we're still working on like laying down and rolling over and stuff like that, but yeah, I don't know. I take them out and do walks and trying to get them to heel. Hazel's not that great with it yet, but she's cute. It's her birthday today, actually. But
oh, happy birthday, Hazel!
Yeah.
Sue says happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. Loki's catching on to it a little bit faster than her, but I don't know. She's still really good. She's such a good dog. I feel like she's like my emotional support animal.
That's where I was going to go with that. Do you ever find that your dogs catch on when you're feeling squirrely? Do you ever notice that they give you a little extra attention or stuff? Like, what does that look like?
Yep. So like anytime I feel like anxious or like I get depressed a lot. I think that's normal with a lot of recovering addicts, to be honest. But I find that Hazel, anytime I feel depressed, she's always curled up behind my legs. Like, she's always around me. Like, I feel like she's presses herself against me to like give me her positive energy.
So we've got some comments coming in here from Hard Knocks Talks regular Joe. Joe, it's always good to see you, my friend. Joe says, "Oh my God, what a beauty. And your story is so powerful, young lady. Keep up the solid recovery." Thank you for the comment, Joe.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah. So did you ever go to meetings?
So like, I mean, I've been to meetings throughout my whole time being an addict. I don't go to them now. I mean, I would, but like I said, I work a lot. I did go to them though, and I did find that at those times they did help. Especially because like I didn't know anybody at those times that were sober, or like because I was so young at that time that I needed that social network, but now that I feel like now that I'm older, I don't really need that social network other than my family.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you see your family a lot now?
Yes, I see my family a lot. Yeah. That, and I also see my boyfriend's family a lot. Like, so both sides of both my family and his family are both like huge supports for both of us. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's really all I have for you tonight. Is there, let me see. Is there any comments here? Well, we've got one from Dave. Dave, thank you for the comment. Dave says, "Tamara, you are awesome. I am so, so proud of all of your accomplishments."
That's my old boss.
Oh yeah. Hello, old boss.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He actually did a lot for me during my recovery.
Oh yeah.
During my first year of recovery, he was there for me really a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad you're here tonight, Dave. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with tonight?
I mean, just anybody else out there that is struggling with addiction, just know that it's never too late. It's never too late to make a change and want to do different. Like, it doesn't matter how long you've been addicted. It can always change. You can always get better.
Awesome. All right, Tamara. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will let you go. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitch and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We can recover, and we're here to show you how. Good night.